Right, it is 6:22. You might find this scarcely believable. I know I do. A report today highlights the methods that bullies use against blind people and others who struggle to see. Often they place objects in the way to cause falls. They prevent them from using mobility aids such as a guide dog or a white cane, or they withhold or hide medicines. At least 1 in 12 visually impaired people in the UK is estimated to be a victim or survivor of domestic abuse. This is something we never talk about, and you're probably surprised. Well, I don't know, maybe you're not surprised that this stuff goes on. This woman, who has asked to remain anonymous, was in one such relationship.
I was diagnosed with senior Loken syndrome at the age of 11. I was told that I would lose my vision by the age of 25, but managed to hold on to a little bit of it until the age of 43. By the time I was 30, my field of vision was reduced to the size of a 5-pence piece. I met my ex-husband in 1997, and we dated as usual for a bit, and then I moved in actually quite quickly from my mum's. This started out okay, and in about 6 months we were married. However, I knew something was wrong on the first day of our honeymoon when he actually made me cry. I then instantly thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? What have I got myself into? We had children, and things started to get gradually worse. He didn't want me to go out with my friends. He wanted to control who I saw and what I did, and also was suspicious about people at work. He was trying to control everything I did, every minute of my life. Whether he thought this was easier, the more I lost my sight, I'm not sure, but as I said, it seemed to get worse. I must admit he never raised a hand on me, but he would throw things and smash things, and he even broke his hand once. I didn't realise how much he was suffocating me until I divorced him. I'm so happy now with a new partner who loves me very much and treats me the way I should be treated. I actually can't see anything now, and I have more confidence now than I ever had. I'm now very independent and happy, and a woman who can go out when she likes and spend money on what she likes and be with my friends whenever I like.
Goodness me. That woman who wanted to remain anonymous, her story was revoiced for us by our producer, Verity. Let's now speak to Olivia Curno, Chief Executive of Vision Foundation. It's a charity that has produced the report along with SafeLives. Good morning to you, Olivia.
Good morning, Aasmah.
How does that 1 in 12 figure compare to the rest of the population?
It's about 3 times the rate. So we now know that blind and partially sighted men and women are at far greater risk than the general population.
And why is that? Is that because, I'm just trying to understand, is that because there are awful people out there who are attracted towards other people who are more vulnerable?
It's hard to know from the report, but the patterns of behaviour we saw were really often starting out with control. And it's possible that blind and partially sighted people do use their partners positively as support. So a sighted guide, maybe helping reading post, and that perhaps that unravels. But we also know that abusers do target people who they perceive to be vulnerable. So it's hard to know where this comes from, but time and again through the research, we were hearing the same kind of patterns of behaviour actually that your guest just described, sadly often overlaid with violence. So control of social activities, refusing to guide to medical appointments, hiding medicines, and then through to gaslighting behaviours like hiding objects around the house, particularly hiding mobility aids, and then ultimately a lot of very frightening violence. And you can imagine if you're a blind person, you can't necessarily see where a blow is coming from. You don't know that an object's been thrown. So people talked about how frightening it was to be in their homes subjected to violence when they couldn't see what was going to happen, and nor could they see to flee.
Now, your organisation, the Vision Foundation's produced the report along with SafeLives. Have there been previous reports into this particular problem?
No, quite incredibly, given the findings, this is the first report and piece of research of its kind. We knew previously that disabled people generally were at heightened risk of domestic abuse. So we were very keen to understand how that impacted blind and partially sighted people, particularly as we were finding anecdotally through our work that there were no sight loss charities specifically working on domestic abuse, and no domestic abuse charities that were targeting or accessible for blind and partially sighted people specifically. So when we uncovered this 1 in 12 statistic, which translates to 188,000 people in the UK today, alongside the dearth of services, we became very concerned. We then went out to practitioners, professionals working in healthcare, charity, even the police, to ask, about their practice and ask what they knew. And more than 3/4 said that they didn't know what their policy was around this and didn't know if they had a policy. They didn't know if their social media was accessible. So that's really important because people are trying to seek help. And very, very few had any kind of specific training.
If someone's listening to this and they recognise, that this is what's happening in their relationship, what do they do? Where do they go?
We would strongly recommend that if anyone believes they're at risk of domestic abuse, they do call the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. That's 0808 2000 247. But if people think they're in imminent danger, they should ask for the police, calling 999. I think if people don't feel that it's that urgent or don't feel that they're ready to take that step, we would still really ask that friends and family, for example, who have concerns, open up opportunities for the conversation in the absence of the perpetrator. Something that came through time and again through our research is that there were no confidential spaces. So this included when people were going to see their GP, often their abuser would come with them in the guise of a carer. So providing confidential spaces for the blind or partially sighted person to disclose what's going on, asking the questions repeatedly because they may not be ready early on, so that's part of our conversation. Aasmah, you'll be aware, and I remember that at every point during maternity services, because pregnant women are at higher risk of domestic abuse, you're asked, are you safe at home? And we'd really like to see healthcare professionals and others begin the conversation at every point they can, accepting that the vast majority of relationships that blind and partially sighted people are in are happy and healthy, but we need to be there for what we now know is the 9% where things are going wrong.
Yes, absolutely. Olivia, thank you very much for that. It's Olivia Curno. She's Chief Executive of Vision Foundation.